Good morning. Our first topic today is classifying questions. We're going to talk about one system of dividing questions into different types. Now, you might wonder why it's important to divide questions into different types, but in fact, this idea is key to the discussions that we'll be doing later this term, and also to understanding how to find good topics for argumentative essays, which you'll be writing later this term. There are three main types of questions that we'll talk about today, and actually these questions are classified according to the type of reasoning required to answer them. The three types of questions we'll be discussing are one-system questions, no-system questions, and conflicting systems questions. And more information about each of those later. Classifying questions into different types can help us understand what we need to do to find the answer, understand what the answer will look like when we find it, and also whether we can evaluate the answer or not, and if we can evaluate it, how we can evaluate it. First, one-system questions. This type of question has a right answer and many wrong answers. They require evidence to answer and really rely on facts. And usually there's an established way to find the answer to this type of question. If I ask you what the temperature in the room is now, of course there is an established way to find out that information. If you have a thermometer, you can check directly, right? Otherwise you might need to check the thermostat in the room. These questions can be a little bit more complex, but the key here is that they have a right answer that can be established by facts. So if I ask you a question like, was the average temperature in Bangkok higher last year or 5 years ago? That would require some research to answer. However, it would be able to find the right answer to this question, which could be established in the form of a number. And typically, experts would agree about the answer to this type of question. The same, if I ask you how many types of Thai dance, traditional Thai dance, are still performed today in Thailand, that would require some research to answer, but in the end, you could come up with the correct answer. Mathematical questions also often fall into this category. For example, if I ask you whether the product of a negative number and a positive number is positive or negative, right? Again, that has one correct answer and one only. Next, we have no-system questions. Questions of this type are based only on personal preference, which means that really, everyone could have a different answer. It's only their opinion, and these answers cannot be assessed. So if you say that you enjoy studying mathematics and your friend does not enjoy it, I cannot say that someone is right for enjoying it, and I cannot say that someone is wrong for not enjoying it. The same holds true for art or for aesthetics. If I ask you which PowerPoint theme you find the most attractive, really, everyone in the class might have a different answer, and none of those answers are really right or wrong. They cannot be assessed. Finally, we have the most interesting question type, that of conflicting systems. Questions of this type actually require evidence from multiple systems. So if we think back to one-system questions, we saw that there's usually one way to establish the answer, right? Either by measurement or by referring to law. If I ask you whether capital punishment is illegal in Thailand, really that has a right answer and a wrong answer. You can research that in the law book and you can find the answer. This type of question, though, is a bit more complicated, or rather the reasoning required is more complicated because it draws on multiple systems. So it might draw on, for example, law in addition to science and ethics. This type of question is actually very productive to debate. and it produces disagreement even among experts. There's no agreed on right answer. And actually, for this type of question, there is really no one right answer in most cases. However, there are better or worse answers. So we saw that for one system questions, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. For no system questions, really, the answers cannot be assessed. And for this third type, for conflicting systems questions, there are better answers and worse answers. And actually, the answers can be assessed using intellectual standards, which we will introduce in a future lecture. An example of this type of question is if I ask you, what is the best way to reduce the number of drug addicts in society? Now, this question has been posed in many societies because drug addicts do cause issues for society. They harm themselves and sometimes other people. And there are many answers to this question. Some societies prefer to open, for example, safe injecting rooms where drug users can use drugs in a safe environment and also receive counseling to help them stop. Other societies at times have imposed very harsh laws that imprison drug addicts. They put them in jail or even in some cases kill them. You can see that this type of question is very complicated and actually requires elements of different systems. So for example, in this one, for drug addicts, we do need to consider the law. We do need to consider ethics, science, right? The science behind addiction. And also perhaps the tradition of the country. How has this been dealt with in the past? In summary, today we've talked about classifications of questions, a topic that will be of interest to you as we continue with our small group discussions throughout the term, and also which will help you in choosing good questions to answer in your argumentative essays. In our course, we'll focus on conflicting systems questions as these are the best for discussions and also really are the most fruitful for argumentative essays. That's it for our lecture today. In our next lecture, we'll address intellectual standards which allow us to evaluate responses to conflicting systems questions. Thank you.